Hi and welcome to the channel. I'm Francis, and the title Francis Visits Angus. Now, it's not the first time that I visited Angus, because I've been up here for about 45 years, and back in the 80s I took a in-depth look at some of the more obscure, shall we say, places of interest, particularly historical interest. So now I've decided that I'd like to revisit all these places and see if there's any change, and if there has been change, has it been for the better or has it been for the worst? Now, Angus has a rich history. In fact, the name Angus itself goes back to Pictish times, apparently, named after an old Pictish king called Angus. There are many myths and legends connected with Angus. Some are true, some are fairy tales, but you can judge for yourself. What we do ask is that you enjoy yourselves and join us on our trip over the many different places that Angus has to offer. So, our first visit will be to a mausoleum, which is another word for a graveyard, belonging to the local people that used to live here, in particular most of the richer people that used to live here, because this area was very much more populated than it is now in days gone by. Let's have a look at some of the stones in this graveyard. In fact, how would you like me to mess with your mind? Because that's what I'm going to do. As I mentioned just now, you can tell that some of these graves belong to important people in the community, but maybe not the guy that we're going to look at in a moment. How would you like to die before you was born? Well, this chap did. This is the tombstone of one George James Ramsay. And here it says he was born in 1859 and died in 1840. Does that mean that the stonemason that cast this piece of rock had dyslexia? Or is there something more sinister to the story? Obviously a stonemason's mistake. Below the mausoleum is a feature of rock that many people know who live around this area, and I'm just about to photograph it, and then I'm going to show you. Here it is. Do you recognise it? This is Elephant Rock, and you'll see why it's called Elephant Rock in a few more minutes. Very much like a lot of the coast on the east of Angus, the cliffs and the rock formations are sandstone. The sandstone is a very easily worn away rock. Obviously it's made from sand, but sand that was laid down millions of years ago apparently, and it's been used extensively throughout Angus and other areas for building. Arbroath Abbey, for instance, very red, just like the Elephant Rock here, was built from sandstone, red sandstone. Many of the townhouses in Arbroath and villages nearby are made from the same material. Here, Elephant Rock, we see very prominently the trunk. No tusks, I'm afraid. If there ever were tusks, the sea has taken them away, and that is the fate of most of the features like this along the coast. The sea, ice and rain will rapidly over the years wear such features away. A few 100 million years time this won't even exist. But we will take you to see some other features like this along perhaps Old Methy, Arbroath, the famous cliffs, and you'll see just what action the sea has had over the millennia. One day we won't be able to do this because that trunk will just fall into the sea, and it will no longer be the Elephant Rock, it will just be the rock. Photograph taken, it's time to move on. Our next visit will be to the Bodin lime kilns, which is just a short walk away along this lovely coastal path. In fact, as we walk, you can just see the lime kiln. We won't call it a roof because it's not a roof anymore, but you see the top of the lime kiln coming into view. See you there. So here we are arriving at Bodin Point, and as you'll see from some of the shots in the background, the cliffs are also made from red sandstone, and the promontory upon which I'm now walking is red sandstone. These boats are in a terrible, unseaworthy state now, but they do hark back to the time when Bodin Point was quite a significant and important fishing community in the salmon trade. In fact, there was a big house which housed many salmon workers over the years, which was built in the 1800s. Take a look at these beautiful flowers. I don't think I've ever seen so much growth or profusion of sea thrifts as I have here today. They're called sea thrift, but you get them in the mountains as well. And the reason being is that they are a plant and a flower that can withstand very harsh conditions, whether that be the salt air and the storms associated with the coast, or the harsh weather that's always associated with the mountains. Now here's the main feature of Bodin Point. This is the lime kiln, and as you'll see as we go round it, this old building itself is in grave danger of disappearing into the sea. Now the reason for this is because the promontory on which the old kilns stand was also red sandstone, and the sea over the years has been doing its damage. Now you may be wondering, what was the purpose of a lime kiln? Well, simply the land hereabouts is very acid, and one way to counteract acid is with lime, which is an alkali. So there was a lot of need for agricultural land and improvement in this area, but the soil was too acid, until somebody in the very early 1700s discovered that there was limestone in the bedrock. There was enough to convert into lime by heat. And we're talking about very excessive heat, and furnaces in these lime kilns were used for that purpose. Now this lime kiln was built probably 1700 or thereabouts, and it's ideally situated because by the sea it would be able to bring in coal from Fife by boat, coal being obviously the fuel to kiln the lime, and the lime was dug up nearby. So there you have it. Now, as our shot shows you, it is in dangerous repair, and there are signs which will tell you that the place is a dangerous building. So if you bring children here, do be careful. You don't want them falling into the kiln. I've been coming here for 45 years, and over those 45 years I've noticed considerable erosion on the seaside. So there will come a point, just like Elephant Rock and many other features along the coast, when this place, unless it's looked after by the local authorities, will disappear and will be forgotten forever, which will be a shame, don't you agree? Very popular place this for visitors. While I was here, a number of families came down to enjoy and sunbathe because it was a beautiful day. Before we go to our next destination, a little further south down the coast, let's have one more look around this little bay and its wonderful cliffs. Again, red sandstone. Looking back north towards the Elephant Rock, where we've just come from. Well, here we are at Lunan Bay, a very popular beach, one of Eastern Scotland's best beaches, and as we'll find out in a little while's time, it was also famous and popular with the Vikings of long ago. But we'll tell you about that in a few minutes. Just enjoy the cold North Sea washing the beaches, the sandy beaches of Lunan Bay. For anything comparable, you have to go up to St Cyrus, a little bit further north. This is, as you can see, a popular area. Many a time I've come here and had a picnic in the dunes behind us. There's good parking. And on a summer's day, you can't beat it. Rivals the west of Scotland anytime. So now we're doing a flyover above Lunan Bay. Here's the River Lunan. This comes out of Rescoby Lock, and we'll visit Rescoby Lock at some point in the future. But take a look at the extent of these beautiful beaches. 2 miles at least of pure sand. The tide is in at the moment, but imagine when the tide is out, and looking out onto the horizon and hordes of Viking longships coming towards the coast. What a fear that would have put into the residents. There wasn't a place or a part of the British Isles that wasn't affected by the Norse and the Danes at some point in their history around the 1200s, which is the time we're talking about now. Sutherland in northern Scotland gets its name from Southland, which was the southern extent at one time of the Norse Kingdom of Norway. Much raping, pillaging, burning and carousing was done by the Vikings when they landed on these fertile soils and took away the treasures that particularly the priests and the religious people had hoarded in their churches. So what could be done for protection? What could be done to ward off these Vikings? Part of the answer lies in places like this. This is the Red Castle, also at Lunan Bay, and it was built for William the Lion in the 12th century to house a garrison of soldiers who would be forever on the lookout for Viking raiders and ready to repel them. This castle is called, as we say, the Red Castle. Why is it called the Red Castle? And that's its original name, by the way. It is because it's made of red sandstone, which was readily available in the soil. Because it was made of red sandstone, as you can see, it is in a very poor state of repair. In fact, there are dangers now of it actually falling into the sea, and restricted visiting is the norm now. You won't be able to get into the castle grounds itself because of barriers and such like. There are also formers nesting up in the heights of the rock there, in the masonry. And it's ideal for formers. It's now time to leave the coast and head inland towards Forfar. But on the way, let's have a look at a tiny little village or hamlet called Milldens. Here we have one of the original grindstones, if you like. Would have been used to grind the flour. There would have been two, one on top of the other, on a big shaft that would have been turned by big wooden cogs, maybe steel cogs, from the water wheel, which would have been on the other side of the building. Now let me take you to a different stone, another stone entirely different. Here we have an example of what's known as a cup and ring mark stone. Now these go back probably to Bronze Age times, maybe even older, and hereabouts there would have been a community of original settlers, possibly Bronze Age, maybe older, and their religious rites and customs were very much akin to, say, the people of Stonehenge and places like that, Brodgar up at the far north. And these cup and ring marks are of religious significance, but nobody really knows what they are for. Some people think they have astrological or astronomical overtones, but nobody really knows. And we'll come across quite a few of these in our journeys, and we'll also come to stones that are related to this sort of thing. Cup and ring stones. Along the main road from Milldens is this beautiful loch, Balgavis, or as the locals pronounce it, Balgais. It's a nature reserve and it's well known for wildlife, including osprey. It's a tranquil spot, but unfortunately you have to be very quiet when you're here, so enjoy the tranquility. We're looking at Turin Hill in the very distance. On Turin Hill is an important, or one-time important, hill fort occupied for hundreds and hundreds of years, and probably associated with the people that were associated with the stones that we're looking at now. Literally just a couple of minutes down the road from Mill Dens, where we just looked at the cup and ring mark stones, is this interesting standing stone, which will have been probably part of a ring of stones that probably existed around the same time, i.e. about 4,000 years ago, and was probably used by the same community. As I say, these would have been a ring of stones, probably celebrating lunar eclipses, whereas, say for instance, Stonehenge was solar. This would have been lunar, as is common with most of the Scottish standing stones and rings. So we'll see some more of these later on when we go to Finhaven Hill Fort, bigger than these in fact. So there are lots of these all over Scotland, the most famous being the Ring of Brodgar and Stennis up in the far north in the islands. But this is Angus's very own, or this is one of Angus's very own. Well, we're standing here at Priory, and the shot you're looking at now is towards Turin Hill, and as you see it's very low down. That's because from Balguy's Lock, Rescoby Lock, and all this area here was once all underwater. In fact, to get into the Priory at one point, many hundreds of years ago, you would need a drawbridge, and since then, of course, the land has been much drained for agricultural purposes, although you won't want to stray too far out that way because you'll get wet feet, absolutely. But we'll tell you more about the Priory in a few minutes. Very interesting history. Resteneth Priory was built in 1153 during the reign of King Malcolm IV of Scotland, and it was under the auspices of the Augustinian monks based mainly at Jedburgh. This building is not the original because there was before it, dating to about 710, a Pictish church of a time when King Nectan of the Picts was in control of this part of the country. We're coming into the main area of worship now, which we would call a church or a chapel. It was quite big. There are gravestones in the floor, and there is also, as you'll see in a second, a stone coffin on display. And it is said that King Robert the Bruce actually lost his son in infancy and had him buried here. Very substantial architecture, very solidly built, but it hasn't stopped it decaying over the years. The only part that really remains intact is the tower itself. And now we're looking down at the two remaining walls of what have been called the refectory, and that's where the monks lived, ate and worked. 3-storey building, beautiful surroundings, although probably these trees would not have been here at the time, because as we mentioned, much of this land was underwater. This tower can be seen from many a vantage point around nearby Forfar. Sticks out from the trees very prominently. And there again in the background we see Turin Hill. Here we have a stone coffin. They didn't use pine in those days, just stone hewn out by a mason. It stopped the mice from eating the wood. Here I'm coming out from one of the oldest, if not the oldest door of any building in Scotland. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this first little tour around some of the beauty spots of Angus. We look forward very much to seeing you back again when we take you on another tour in episode 2.